and welcome into the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show. I'm the voice of the Wildcats, Nolan Alexander, joined today by our Assistant AD for Communications, Brian Harvey. We're here at historic Moore Gymnasium, a cozy, intimate setting that's home for one of two MEAC programs on both the men and the women that are undefeated in conference play. Your Bethune-Cookman University Wildcats couldn't ask for a better start in 2018, Brian.
I couldn't. You're talking 8-0, 4-0 and 4-0 right now for the women and the men. So for me, that's the best start that you can have. And like you said, only one of two programs in the MEAC. But for me, I think it starts with VBL, Vanessa Blair-Lewis and that women's team. Man, what they're doing right now is phenomenal. It's just win, baby, win. I mean, you talk about Angel Golden, Chastity Brown, and then the battles in there. But then also Emily Hunt starting to really get up to her game, and Emily Williams, starting to really get up to her game and play ball. Now, on the men's side, what can you say? Ryan Ritter, I mean, you have nothing to compare it to. So you come in, he doesn't know the MEAC. He has to go with assistant coaches that are his new guys and only basically 2 or 3 players that can tell him, Coach, this team likes to play like this, or Coach, when we go on this trip, this is what it's going to be like. Other than that, all these guys are coming in fresh. So your ideas and everything you do, they're taking the MEAC by storm right now. Nolan, 4-0, 4-0. Like you said, I can't ask for a better start for me, the program.
What's so interesting about the men's team right now is they ended 2017 losing 4 straight on the road. They opened 2018, as you just said, 4-0 the conference. They won 5 in a row with a big non-conference road win at Volusia County rival Stetson University. And they've done it with many second-half comebacks. It opened up against South Carolina State here at historic Moore Gymnasium in front of a great crowd, down by 10 at half. And then for the first time this season, they posted a second-half comeback. That carried over, down by double digits at Howard University, down late 8 points at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, 2 wins on the road, and then dominating Florida A&M. But they've shown a key second-half resolve.
You know what, Nolan, you just said it's key second half resolve. You talk about playing on the road. Playing here at Moore Gymnasium, that's one thing. You know the crowd's going to be behind you. You know that the energy and everything is going to lift those kids. They always have the 6th man. That's not a problem. But when you talk about going to Howard University, and then you talk about the adversity they had at Howard, where they didn't play at Bird Gymnasium, where is it a lot like Moore Gymnasium. It is a cozy environment. It's a little bit bigger than Moore, but those kids really get on you. It's barreled down in there. You're kind of like in a pool almost, I used to say. It looks like a pool. Those kids are really screaming down in on you. It is a great environment. Then you go to UMES where it's a little dead. You know, it's not as energetic and adrenaline filled as some of the other places. So
you got to bring your own energy.
You got to bring your own energy. You got to make your own energy at UMES, or like now the Shore. Excuse me, I like to get my friends up there in Milliston Shore. The Shore now. It is just one of those places to where you have to actually play ball. There's nothing to do in the town. There's nothing to get your mind off the game. You get focused. You play. Washington D.C. is a whole nother monster that can kind of draw you out. But those guys, they stayed focused. They had second half resolve, and they played their game. And I think that's what Ryan wanted. Stay our game. No matter what happens, we're going to play our game. We're going to learn from this. But hey, they're learning and they're winning with it too. So other teams better get ready for the squad.
One commonality for the men's team in this long winning streak has been the ability to win the hustle stats. Through the 5-game win streak for BCU, the Wildcats have pulled in 52 more rebounds than their opponent, and in every single game, BCU has more second chance points than the opposition. And I think a big key to that has been the rise of Sufiani Diakite, the junior out of Bronx, New York, who, if he had one more point against South Carolina State, would have 6 straight double-doubles, 6 straight double-doubles. He's been huge for BCU.
More than huge, Nolan. That Sufi has been that guy. You know, you look for someone that's going to crash the board, someone that's going to get you those points. You just said it. He's a double-double machine right now. I mean, this is a kid that is absolutely giving everything he's got. And like you said, the hustle factor. That guy's going to really get in there. He's going to grind. He's going to battle. And when you have that, you've got something that other teams, they have to try to match that now. So they got to pull their energy up. They got to say, hey, this guy's going to go towards the boards. How am I going to be able to do that? That pulls somebody in or pulls somebody out. That leaves shooters open when he's crashing the boards. And like you said, second chance points, that's the biggest thing. Always use this reference when you come to any sport. If I have the ball, you don't. So that means I can score, you know, and that's the biggest thing. You give me 2 chances at something, that's another opportunity I've got to score. You give me 3 chances at Sufi crashing the boards, that's another opportunity I have to score. If I have the ball, you don't.
Over on the women's side, similar to the men, they posted many second-half comebacks, and their 2 road wins, like the men against Howard and UMBS, they were down in the 4th quarter. Defense was strong, and the offense had some timely shots.
This is a Vanessa Blair-Lewis strategy. This is a team that they're never going to stop. They're going to come from behind. They're going to grit things out. It may not be the prettiest games, and sometimes there are teams that try to lull us to sleep. You know, last year there was Kaylin Williams on the inside, and she really changed the game. Now there's not that dominating force, but you have a team around not just one figure on the inside. You've got perimeter shooters. You've got the Battles. You've got Emily. You've got Angel. But now you also have people on the inside. You've got Chastity. You have an absolute force that just everywhere in the court, scoring can happen, defense can happen, and when they play together, there's no stopping this team. It may not be the prettiest thing, but guess what's pretty? The W.
Very pretty. Up next, we'll hear from the head coach for the women's side, Vanessa Blair-Lewis. She's going to give us a more in-depth look at their current 2017-2018 women's squad. Before we get to that, we want to remind you, Brian, where's the best place to keep up to date for everything BCU athletics?
BCU Athletics. You just said it. You're talking about Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. BCU Athletics as well as BCUathletics.com. Go on there. Scores, results, live tweets, live updates, behind the scenes for Instagram, Snapchat, everything. It's BCU Athletics. You just said it.
www.bcuathletics.com. Up next, head women's coach Vanessa Blair-Lewis here in the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show.
At BCU, every game is a life lesson.
A chance to show faith,
respect,
and sportsmanship.
It's bigger than winning or losing.
There's life beyond the game. Opportunities beyond the classroom.
Responsibilities to our community.
On a much larger stage.
As ambassadors to the world.
Leaders, champions, we are Wildcats. And we believe in faith, integrity, and love. Enter to learn, depart to serve. That's the Bethune-Cookman way. Go Wildcats!
The DNA of Bethune-Cookman comes from the heart of a great woman whose legacy lives on today in each and every Wildcat.
I leave you love.
I leave you hope.
I leave you a thirst for education.
I leave you faith.
I leave you, finally, a responsibility to our young people.
Great leaders always leave something for others to follow.
What will you leave us?
In the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, success for our student athletes isn't just measured by wins and losses, points on the scoreboard, or individual stats. It's also measured by their performance in the classroom, in the community, and ultimately graduation. Our student athletes aren't just playing to win a single game, they're playing to win at life. Because games end, but life keeps on going. The MEAC, educating student athletes for the game of life.
And thanks for sticking with us here in the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show. We talked about the current 2017-2018 BCU women's basketball squad, but let's get caught up with the head coach, Vanessa Blair-Lewis, for her thoughts on this year's team.
Well, we talk a lot about it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't worry about who gets the credit. And so that's the kind of team we are, very unselfish. When it's my number and it's my day and I'm just having that great game, you watch the bench, they are cheering for each other. They are up, they are clapping, and then you know what, the next day it might not be your game, but it's your teammates, and we're a family. So as long as we don't worry about who gets the credit, you can accomplish a lot. Emily Williams has really stepped up. She's always been there these last 4 years, and I think in the beginning of the season she just went through a little dry spell, and so we had to try something else just to, you know, kind of keep the team moving forward. And then she just came back blazing, and she's been on fire ever since. Just the leadership, the running the team, the being able to score, the way that she has just been big for our start. You know, Jasmine Brown, I mean, who's always been there, you know, played behind, Kaylin Williams and all that she's done. It was tough to find minutes for her because you had such a powerhouse in the paint. And now she's come back for us this year, and as a junior has really started to produce. Got to change a few things in her game because, now it's on her shoulders, where before she, came in and played some minutes. Now these are her minutes, and so going from 8 minutes to 28 minutes is a big difference. And so, but she's adjusted, and we have that punch inside that we need. Ashanti Hunt, can't say enough about her all-conference selection last year. Hopefully touted this year to be a first-team all-conference selection. Gives us so much. She plays like LeBron James for us. She's a point through four. She can play point guard when we need her. off guard, in the post, breaking the press. She does everything for us. She is just a junkyard, we call garbage girl. She does it all, and she doesn't complain. She defends the toughest player on every single team. Can't say enough about Ashanti Hunt and what she's done for this program. Angel Golden has really stepped up, played in the shoes and the shadows of Kendra Cooper for the most part of her career, but now has really stepped out on her own. Now she's playing 30+ minutes a game and has really expanded her game to just not be a three-point shooter. She comes off the dribble, she gets to the paint, but bigger than that, she can defend and rebound with the best of them. Brianna Battle has stepped in and really done something for us that we didn't expect so early in her career. Not only is she an amazing shooter, but she runs point guard too, so she's a 1-2 punch out there on the floor. We can have her out there on the floor with almost any of the other shooters, which makes it such a triple threat to have her and Emily Williams and Angel Golden, and even her sister at times on the wing, those two battling it out, so to speak, who's gonna make the most shots. But Brianna Battle has been a welcome to this program. She has just flourished, and if you just watch her play, she doesn't look stressed, she doesn't look like anything bothers her, she doesn't look freshman-like at all. You can't say enough about Amaya Scott, freshman from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 6'1" post player. She gets out there and she is so athletic, and there's so much a part of her game that there's so much potential. We just cannot wait to keep growing her game, and she's an amazing young lady to coach. It's yes ma'am, no sir, what else do you want me to try and do? And she goes out there and she is the most coachable kid that I feel like we have. But outside of that, she just plays off her athleticism right now. And the beauty of it is so much room for her to grow. She can score in the paint, she can defend, she can rebound with the best of them, she can handle the ball and get to the hole. Like, she is gonna, I definitely believe at the end of this season that she's gonna be making one of those rookie teams. Another one is Brianna Hardy, who is a transfer, sat out last year, still has 3 years left to play, but is more like a freshman with this team because she hasn't played yet. But she's a lefty, she can shoot that ball from the outside, she can get inside, and undersized as she is, still score. Lindsay Edwards, she is our Dennis Rodman. She's played since she was a freshman. I don't know if you can think that far back. When she came in, Taylor Houston tore her ACL, and she immediately was thrown into the starting lineup. And she has been in that lineup for 4 straight years. Last year when Taylor had a really great season, she played more limited minutes, but this year she's just come on like gangbusters. She just does what she does every single game consistently. Well, Armani last year was one of our sparks off the bench with her and Nene and Angel, and they came in the game, and when we were at a lull in the non-conference trying to figure out a way to score, those kids came off that bench and they were impressive. And now Armani is still as impressive as ever. We've kind of moved her off the ball because she's such a big guard and a strong guard. We put her at the 3 spot where she can really use her abilities to get to the basket, which she really loves to do. Well, I think it's experience now. When you talked about our first year, we went to the tournament and kind of backed into being champions that year. It was because of some other people that lost and some other people won, and we ended up being number 1. And we go to that tournament and we were on a different type of ground, had never been there before, and we lose the first night, the first day, and we come back home, and that for that team, it was so embarrassing and just shattering that the next year we said, hey, you know what, we're getting to that championship game, and hadn't been to a championship game in 40 years. And we did that. We got to the championship game, we came up 3 points short, and every girl's heart in that locker room was broken. But now you have 2 years of young kids that are not young anymore that have had that valuable experience of what it takes to go through a conference season, and now what it takes to take the steps to get to a championship game. And so I think for all of us that is where our season rests. That not that the rest of the road is not important, because all of these games, are important to us. But for our biggest goal, our main goal, every girl's locker room, they want to win and go to the big dance. And that's our goal.
Coming to Daytona Beach, I didn't know that I would be experiencing so many beautiful places. The beach is a beautiful place to be. The water really clears my mind, and on top of that, coming to Bethune-Cookman, it was my escape from everything else.
When I first stepped on this campus, I basically didn't have anything, just 2 bags to my name. But I immediately understood that this school is about family, unity, love.
She gave me love.
She gave me hope.
She gave me the thirst for education.
And most of all, she gave me the respect for the uses of power. We live in a way that reflects our deepest convictions. But most of all, we enter to learn and depart to serve. So take a look at Bethune-Cookman University.
And thanks for joining us here in the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show. Game of odds here. The odds of 2 siblings earning Division I basketball scholarships. Gotta be slim. The odds of both siblings playing Division I basketball less than an hour away from each other, even slimmer. But we've got a special case here at Bethune-Cookman University and the University of Central Florida. Chastity Brown for the Wildcats, Chad Brown for the UCF Knights are off to great starts this season, playing less than an hour away, brother and sister doing it on the hardwood.
You know what, that's the thing. You look at some of the brother-sister duos throughout time. You talk about Reggie Miller and Cheryl Miller. Well, this has the potential to be just like that. You know, you're talking about some absolute dominating play, and both of them having stellar seasons, you know, and you look at like you said, Nolan, the proximity. Orlando, Daytona Beach, 45 minutes, and you want to get right to UCF from this campus, maybe 50, 52 minutes, somewhere around there, in a wonderful campus they've got. Same thing here in Daytona Beach. But for the family, it's got to be the biggest thing. You get to see both kids play, and I think that's the biggest thing in the world. You know, Reggie Miller kind of went off, and of course Cheryl stayed behind USC. So right now, you've got a big opportunity to be able to support both those kids. And when you're in college, that's the biggest thing, to be able to look up there and say, hey, there's mom, here's dad, here's grandma, here's aunt, you know, and both those kids being able to say that on a nightly basis when they're out on the court. I think that's the biggest thing.
So what does Chastity Brown think about that? Let's meet the star for the Lady Wildcats.
My first option, I actually committed to a school in South Carolina, Charleston Southern. But I realized that I was a little far away from home, 6 hours away, and my brother was staying at UCF. He had committed his sophomore year in high school. So he was set in stone. That was set in stone. He was going to UCF. And I decided to stay in Florida because of the fact that he was so close to home, and I'm a mama's girl, and we're so close. Me and my mom and my brother, you know, we all stayed up in the house together. So I knew I had to stay close to home. Like, it was going to be hard for me not to. So I decided to stay in Daytona because of that. And Bethune-Cookman is a great school. I'm excited, and I love being here. My grandmother went here, my mom went here, so that's another reason, you know, I was just like, this school is it. Like, chapel services, I love them. It just reminds me of my church back home. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing, though, being here and having like that support system. Family can come to basically every home game. And if I just need a little mama loving sometimes, I can go home, get a home-cooked meal. So that's honestly the biggest thing, staying close to home. Having a brother playing college basketball is very helpful. We rely on one another for confidence, we talk to each other every single day, probably 3 times a day. And we just talk about, basketball, how things are going on the court, what we're gonna do today in practice to get better. And being the fact that we were kind of in the same position, and he kind of still is, we just have to, we tell each other we have to do things that, the big probably won't do. And we have to make that extra play, that extra, take a charge if we have to do this, do that. We want to be that role player for the team so that we could, get on the floor, see the floor more. Honestly, when it comes to my mom making decisions about whose game she's going to go to that night, she doesn't have to make a decision. She's going to make sure she makes it to both of our games, whether she has to leave fourth quarter of my game and to be on time to his, like she's going to make it. I don't think there's one game where we're both home and she hasn't missed. So if both of us made it to the big dance, if both Browns made it to the big dance, I think that would be the time my mom had to make the decision. But it would be awesome, that would just be the goal, the goal we both wanted.
At BCU, every game is a life lesson.
A chance to show faith,
respect,
and sportsmanship.
It's bigger than winning or losing.
There's life beyond the game, opportunities beyond the classroom,
responsibilities to our community
on a much larger stage.
As ambassadors to the world,
leaders, champions, we are Wildcats. And we believe in faith, integrity, and love. Enter to learn, depart to serve. That's the Bethune-Cookman way. Go Wildcats!
The DNA of Bethune-Cookman comes from the heart of a great woman whose legacy lives on today in each and every Wildcat.
I leave you love.
I leave you hope.
I leave you a thirst for education.
I leave you faith.
I leave you, finally, a responsibility to our young people.
Great leaders always leave something for others to follow.
What will you leave us?
In the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, success for our student athletes isn't just measured by wins and losses, points on the scoreboard, or individual stats. It's also measured by their performance in the classroom, in the community, and ultimately graduation. Our student athletes aren't just playing to win a single game, they're playing to win at life. Because games end, but life keeps on going. The MEAC, educating student athletes for the game of life.
And welcome back to the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show with Assistant AD for Communications, Brian Harvey. I'm the voice of the Wildcats, Nolan Alexander. Brian, we started out this show discussing some of the adversity for the men's team, how they ended 2017, how it set them up for this good start to 2018. But going back to that 2017 tough 4-game road trip that spanned 3 straight, went coast to coast from Florida, Georgia, out to Washington. Started out with a game at USF that the Wildcats had a 1-point game at the halftime. Just didn't go their way in the second half in Tampa.
You're right, just didn't go their way. You're talking about a program, USF. It's a big name. It's an up-and-comer, here in the state. A lot of people like to talk about the Big Three, but they consider themselves one of the Big Four, maybe even the Big Five if you include UCF in there right now. So you face a team like that, you're right in the ball game at halftime. We had the crowd down there, some former players. No, we don't give out tickets, guys. Sorry about that. But former players really going down there and supporting the program. Just wasn't meant to be. Shots didn't fall in the second half. It's just the way it is sometimes.
So after that, the Wildcats bus to Lake City and then bust up to Kennesaw, Georgia, about an hour northwest of the city of Atlanta. In a game then for the Wildcats had to bring their A game on the road. Close game at the half, ended up falling by 7.
Same thing as USF. You're right in the game at halftime, but you're facing a team, Kennesaw, up-and-coming program. Al Skinner's been there, done that, former head coach of Boston College. He really knows how to kind of make changes and developments at halftime to kind of overcome whatever Ron Ritter was trying to do and their program were trying to do right there. But again, Wildcats played tough, had beaten Kennesaw last year, so Kennesaw kind of had a little revenge factor on their minds as well.
So that game was on a Saturday. After that, the Wildcats headed west to Washington to take on the University of Washington Huskies and the Washington State Cougars to close out 2017. However, they were supposed to land in Seattle about 4 o'clock local time that Sunday. The Wildcats made national news. Now, as a publicist yourself, you always want to see BCU make national headlines.
Absolutely.
But the Wildcats did for the wrong reasons. If you caught up with that huge Atlanta airport outage in mid-December, that happened at about 1 o'clock local time in Atlanta. 90% of the Wildcat team was on the plane then. And then the unfortunate happened. BCU spent pretty much all Sunday at the Atlanta airport.
That is a home away from home, if you want to call it that. When you're talking about having to spend pretty much a day there and then the team having to go out at different times, Nolan, that affects everything. That only not only affects you mentally, that affects you physically. You're just coming from Kennesaw, big game. You just came from Tampa, big game. You're trying to get ready to go out to the West Coast, 2 big games, and getting ready to really show the West Coast what East Coast basketball and Bethune-Cookman's all about. That affects everything. And now you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, what's going to happen now? You have 2 losses. You're trying to bounce back. That affects you. And now you're sitting in the airport with thousands of other people and no one can go anywhere. everything starts to compile on you. Sickness, everything comes into play there. Hunger. What do? You know, how do we get over the boredom? And Nolan, like you said, that's a bad situation there, man. You're doomed in that respect.
To make a long story short, some of the Wildcats were able to get out on Monday out to Seattle. The rest of the team arrived Tuesday, 3 hours before tip-off against the Huskies. However, that didn't affect the way BCU started the game at Alaska Airlines Arena, going right back and forth with the University of Washington in the first half.
Absolutely. They talk about purple rain out there. Well, guess what? The Wildcats brought the gold rain out there, and they brought the maroon monsoon and everything else that you want to call it back there. Bethune-Cookman really played the University of Washington well. The Huskies had to give all respect to Bethune-Cookman right there, and they had to go in and say, guys, what's going on? This team from Daytona Beach is coming out here. They're giving us everything they've got. What do we have to do? It's a Pac-12 program right there. You know, Bethune-Cookman's played Pac-12 teams in the past, USC and some other big names out there. But guess what? It wasn't tied at halftime. You know, it wasn't against a team as good as University of Washington, who is going to get better. Bethune-Cookman really played well out there, Nolan. They made a name for themselves. And Ryan Ritter and that staff, hats off to them.
Second half didn't go the way the Wildcats ran out of gas there. And then from the University of Washington, it was a 5-hour bus ride to the Palouse on the eastern side of the state against Washington State. On the ride over, many Wildcats saw snow for the first time. It was a beautiful drive.
Nolan, I guarantee it was a beautiful drive, but I'm glad you did it, not me. You talk about a 5-hour drive. That is going from here beyond Tallahassee. So you think to yourself, that is an absolute monstrous drive on a bus where you've already stayed in the airport. You've now had to fly West Coast. You don't think that it's going to be that far apart, but you have basically a trip to almost another state, it feels like, you know, because when you go 5 hours, you can get to Georgia from here in 5 hours. So you look at Bethune-Cookman coming off of that trip. Washington played well. You go to Washington State. You try to play well again. And again, another Pac-12 opponent that you earned respect from.
Tie game at halftime, 40-all.
At halftime. You know, you're talking about the Cougars. It's the name. Bethune-Cookman really went out there. They stamped the flag Bethune-Cookman out in the state of Washington. Beautiful country, like you said, and everything. You know, that's God's country, as people like to say out there. In mountains of snow. I'm glad the kids got to see a part of the country they normally would not be able to see. But again, Nolan, making a name for themselves.
Good point there for the Wildcats. Chance to do something that someone had never done before. Going out to the West Coast, seeing Seattle, seeing the state of Washington, and seeing some snow. That's about all the time we have for today here in the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show. Big home schedule coming up in the month of February for the men and the women. They're only on the road one weekend. Outside of that, they are here every Saturday and Monday at historic Moore Gymnasium. To get ready for those games, where do you go?
BCU Athletics, of course. BCU Athletics on Instagram, on Twitter, BCU Hoops, BCU WBB on Twitter, and Nolan, www.bcuathletics.com. Your home for everything Bethune-Cookman Athletics, all 17 Division I sports here at Daytona Beach.
For Brian Harvey, I'm Nolan Alexander. Thanks for joining us here in the BCU Wildcat Basketball Insider Show, and we'll see you this February right here at historic Moore Gymnasium. Hail Wildcats!